25 degrees. 25 degrees? That's how fucking cold it is outside right now. That's unbelievable. And I'm from the Northeast. You're probably thinking, listen, dude, you're from Connecticut. You should probably be used to it by now. And you're right. I am used to it. But it's also early November. And I remember no more than a week or two ago, it was like mid-50s, if not low 60s. I went for a nice hike about a week and a half ago with Alexis, and we had a great time, and I saw people wearing shorts, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird for late October, but, you know, still, that's, it was impressive, because it was it was a warm day that day, and people were wearing shorts, and I could see why they were. It was kind of a long hike up to the hill, but long story short, it was nice weather outside. Right now, fucking freezing. I just came in the door a few minutes ago from watching the show at Alexis's house. Good God, I almost kind of wish I stayed in, and I had her come over instead, and we could have watched the show here, and she could have dealt with the cold, because it is so goddamn cold outside right now. And again, it's only early November. It's really unbelievable, and again, I know it's the Northeast. I know I should probably expect this type of thing, but we usually don't get this type of cold until at least late November, if not early December. But Halloween was like 9 days ago, and already it's 25 degrees. Crazy. It's unbelievable. But anyway, guys, you are listening to my Friday night SmackDown review for November 8th, 2019. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And I've kind of made it a thing here on the channel to break down SmackDown every week right here on the channel, as by the time Wrestle Rant Radio rolls around on Thursdays, the show's outdated. There's really nothing to talk about. Raw's a hotter topic. AEW Dynamite, NXT from Wednesday night, and even the pay-per-views, whether it be, we had Crown Jewel last week, we had, or will have rather, Full Gear tonight as this video goes up on Saturday. So I'll be talking about that next week on Wrestle Rant Radio. No real time, not a lot of time to talk about SmackDown. So that's why I've really kind of made it a thing here on the channel every Saturday to give my candid thoughts while they're still fresh in my mind on the Blue brand from Friday night. Now, I sat here a week ago and praised SmackDown from start to finish as one of, if not the best episode of SmackDown in all of 2019. And that's not saying a hell of a whole lot, just because the show has not been overly great in 2019. But you would think, though, that they would put forth a better product now that they're on Fox. We heard so much fucking talk going into the Fox deal that they're going to try to make SmackDown the A show. They're going to film the show at different camera angles. They're really going to do a lot to differentiate SmackDown from Raw. And so far, aside from the set and the theme song and the commentators, I've seen no real difference between the brands at all. And that's not even my biggest problem with it. The issue is that SmackDown is by and large a really dull show. And it has been for a month, and maybe that's speaking too soon, but it shouldn't be a case of, wait until WrestleMania season, or wait till the Royal Rumble, or wait until after Survivor Series. No, casual fans won't give a shit. To me, it's no surprise the rating's been gradually going down and down and down, just decreasing and decreasing and decreasing and decreasing week after week. Granted, the show's rating was up last week from where it was 2 weeks prior, because the week before last week, 2 weeks ago, was on FS1. I don't really count that, nor really should anyone, because it wasn't on Fox. Last week's rating was up from 2 weeks earlier, which was impressive for a show where nothing was advertised in advance. And a big reason people probably tuned in was probably a lot less likely due to the fallout from Crown Jewel, but more because people were curious how SmackDown would play out without the regular roster members, and it turned out to be a great show. I'm very curious to see what the rating is for this show. Coming off what we've seen over the past week, from last week's SmackDown to what we saw on Raw with the NXT guys, the Raw guys in NXT on Wednesday, and now this show. People may have expected some more NXT stars to show up, which they did. Not an abundance of them, but we did see Shayna Baszler at one point. We saw Imperium, of all people, show up, which I guess I probably should have seen coming, because this show did emanate from Manchester, England, and it really only made sense. But I was not expecting it, and I was pleasantly surprised to see Alexander Wolf, Marcel Bartel, and Fabian Eichner, and more importantly, Walter on SmackDown on Friday. Was not expecting to see Walter on my TV screen last night. But other than that, though, this was a lame duck show. And I gotta give credit where credit is due. Although Raw wasn't a home run show on Monday, I do think they've done a better job in the last week alone of getting me more excited for Survivor Series this year than any other year in recent memory. The whole brand supremacy storyline to me died a death 2 or 3 years ago, when we quickly found out that the Raw versus SmackDown narrative means nothing. It means absolutely nothing to see these shows interact with each other or feud with each other because there's nothing on the line. So why should I give a shit? This year, there is a reason to care with NXT being involved, and I talked more about that in detail in last week's SmackDown review when NXT was first announced as being a part of Survivor Series, so I like that. But this show, for whatever reason, I mean, I can think of a few different reasons, but it was a very dull show. It was nothing remotely like SmackDown last week. And I said to Alexis at one point during this show, I had mentioned to her, it's like night and day from what SmackDown was a week ago to what it is today. And she was not defending the show. She thought this was a decent episode, which, I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I thought this was a lame fucking show. I honestly cannot really pull apart, and we'll go match by match, segment by segment momentarily from this show. I honestly cannot tell you of one segment or even really one match that stood out to me from this episode. A lot of the show just dragged on and on and on. It was a lot of decent things, but nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing extraordinary. It was all just mundane nonsense. And again, maybe that was because they were taping the show from Manchester. These England shows are always taped. They're taped earlier on in the day. And there was a time years ago where I loved the episodes of Raw emanating from England because the crowds were always hotter. The shows were always more newsworthy. And it feels like for whatever reason, we always get a fucking tag team title change on these shows. Why, I don't know. But it seems like every year we get some sort of a title change on these shows in England. Maybe it's because word gets out before the shows, while they're being taped in the afternoon and people see that and they want to see how it comes to be. I don't know. I don't know why they do that, but it's really annoying because specifically in the case of this show, it wasn't even necessary for the New Day to become 7-time tag team champions. But anyway, going back to my conversation with Alexis, I had said it's a night and day from SmackDown this week from where it was a week ago. And she had said she didn't think SmackDown was really as good last week as people were making it out to be, just because she thought the show was kind of thrown together and it felt like they were booking it on the fly. And I said that was the whole point. That's why I liked the show, because it didn't follow the same old fucking formula of promo, match, promo, ad for Survivor Series, and so on and so forth. Wash, rinse, repeat. With the SmackDown and Raw formulas every fucking week. And yeah, they were probably booking it on the fly because half of their roster, 90% of that show, did not show up at the arena until 8:20. That's why Paul Heyman spoke slowly, slower than you've probably ever heard him speak before. And they showed the full Cain Velasquez match because they were still waiting for the NXT roster to arrive at the arena. And that's not a report, that's a fact. Rhea Ripley has said that, Adam Cole has said that, that's a fact. So that's pretty insane. But I love that show because it was something different. If nothing else, not only for the NXT involvement, it was something different. This week's SmackDown, more of the same. And I can't say I'm more excited for Survivor Series coming out of this show than I was going into the show. Was it a terrible episode of SmackDown? No. But going back to my original point, SmackDown should feel like a hotter show. Being on Fox, this is what Fox is paying for? Give me a fucking break. The show is probably weaker now than it was before they moved to Fox. Because at least coming out of SummerSlam, they were producing some solid shows with Raw and with SmackDown. And not everything about the episodes I loved. Roman Reigns and Eric Rowan, a feud I didn't really give two shits about. And especially not Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon after a certain point. But by and large, it felt like the shows were better. Last week was great. This week was a big step backward. And again, I realize the show is taped, and that does take something away from it. The crowd was lifeless for the better part of the show. I don't know if they were poorly mic'd or what. They really weren't given much to get excited about, to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't think the crowd was the issue with the show as much as it was with Raw. The Long Island crowd on Raw this week was fucking terrible. They were atrocious. They were really, really bad. The crowd on this show wasn't bad. They were quiet. But again, what was there really to get excited about? It was a lame duck show. The issue is, taped or not, this is what Fox is paying for. That's what I see as a problem. Yeah, they went really balls to the wall with that first show on Fox about a month ago with The Rock and Brock wrestling and all this other shit, a ladder match, and all these appearances from all these icons. But they got to maintain that momentum. And so far, I would argue they haven't. There's been a lot of lame shows. The draft show was decent. The week after that, I remember, really, really lame show. Lame show. It was like Bryan and Roman versus Nakamura and someone else in the main event of SmackDown. It was a really lame fucking show. That might have been the FS1 show. I don't think that was. Last week was the NXT episode 2 weeks ago when they were on FS1. What was the show? I don't even remember. I know they had Brock and Kane, I think. They had Hogan and Flair. They had that 6-man tag team match on FS1. Yeah, so that was the FS1 show. That was also a lame duck show, but it was better than this. This show really did not do much for me. If you couldn't already tell, I did not think this was a great episode of SmackDown by any stretch. We kicked off the night with King Corbin. God, this was brutal. We saw King Corbin addressing Roman Reigns ahead of their scheduled match later on in the night. We were told Roman wasn't here because he was granting some kid's wish, which is all fine and dandy, but the promo we were left with instead from Corbin was some of the worst material I have heard in any WWE promo in 2019. Now, I hate to compare companies, but I gotta say this. How can you book a promo like this? How can you book such a segment 2 days after one of the best promos I've seen all year in wrestling from Cody Rhodes? Say what you will about the guy and the unnecessary shots at NXT, WWE, Triple H, whatever. I have certainly said my piece on that shit. I just think it's petty and dumb and unnecessary. But the guy is a great promo when he's not being scripted and he's speaking from the heart. Cody is a tremendous talker. Does not get nearly enough credit for being as good of a talker as he is. He cut the promo of his life on AEW Dynamite on Wednesday. It was a great promo to the point where even the fucking Rock complimented him on it on Twitter the following day, I think. Which was really cool to see. Either it was Thursday or Friday. I'm pretty sure it was Thursday. But even The Rock saw it and complimented Cody on his promo. And in the span of 1 month, mind you, The Rock has appeared on SmackDown, complimented Cody on I'm all over the place right now. Complimented Cody on a promo he cut on Dynamite, AEW Dynamite, mind you, and watched bits and pieces from NWA Power and praised that show as well. The Rock is more involved with wrestling right now than he has ever been in the last 3 years, which is cool to see. But it's crazy. I mean, maybe he's in between watching, or not watching, but rather filming movies, and he just has a lot of time on his hands. I don't know. I have yet to see The Rock comment in this much wrestling-related stuff in some time. But anyway, point being that Cody cut this amazing promo on Wednesday that if you haven't already seen it, please check it out on their YouTube channel. I had a full gear tonight. It was awesome. And then no more than 2 days later, we get this abysmal promo. I don't think abysmal does it justice, calling this abysmal. This was dreadful. The animated big dog with the chihuahua bark noises. What the fuck was that? What the fuck was this shit? This was a really bad segment. And this probably not only made me, it didn't affect my excitement for the main event. Not only did it not make me more excited for the main event, it actually made me less excited, if that was even possible, for Roman Reigns versus King Corbin in the main event. If this is the shit that was scheduled for SmackDown last week, thank God for those travel delays from Saudi Arabia. I hope shit like that happens more often if this is the type of material that we're going to be getting at the beginning of these shows. Again, I reiterate my question from earlier. This is the shit that Fox is paying millions upon billions of dollars for? Give me a fucking break. This was awful. The SmackDown Tag Team titles were on the line here as the New Day defeated the Revival to become 7-time Tag Team Champions. Kofi's like, a fucking 9-time tag team champion by now, I think. I think the reign from earlier this year counted with Kofi too. I'm not 100% sure on that. Like with this reign, I'm not sure if Xavier Woods is technically champion. He said on Twitter that he was. I saw on Wiki that he was. That means nothing. It's Wikipedia. He probably could have edited it himself, saying that he was 1/3 of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. I don't think it works like that when 1/3 of your group is on the disabled list. I don't think it really works like that. But yeah, the New Day are now 7-time Tag Team Champions. And honestly, I like the New Day, but I cannot bring myself to care. It was so random. Now, I know the match was supposed to happen last week on SmackDown, but there has been minimal build towards this. The Revival just won the titles a month and a half ago at Clash of Champions. They've done nothing with the championships. I can't even remember the last match they won. Have the Revival won a single match since becoming SmackDown Tag Team Champions? Can anyone let me know? I don't think so. I can't remember a single match. These guys have won on TV since they won the titles a month and a half ago. Worse yet, the New Day lost 2 weeks ago on SmackDown to Bobby Roode, Robert Roode, whatever, and Dolph Ziggler. And then they went on to become SmackDown Tag Team Champions. What the fuck? Who cares at this point, who gives a shit? Why should I care about the New Day winning the titles again? I saw this as a big disappointment. The match was good. It was entertaining. Wasn't as good as it could have been. Felt like it lost a lot of energy down the stretch for whatever reason. Again, might have been the live atmosphere. I don't know. I'm not really sure what it was, but the match was kind of a shell of what it could have been. Not only that, but the Revival have now held the tag team titles on Raw and SmackDown 3 times in 2019 since they made it pretty clear in January they wanted out of their contracts. They have since gone on to become 3-time tag team champions. And none of the reigns were memorable in the slightest. I don't think they had a single successful title defense in the time that they were the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Why even bother having them win the titles to begin with? Are WWE really that adamant about having them re-sign to the company to the point where they'll just keep putting tag team titles on them until they convince them to resign? I don't think it's going to happen. If it hasn't happened by now, I really don't think it will. I know that happened with Gallows and Anderson. They offered them some big money deals around WrestleMania season. They declined those. I think they went back with higher deals, higher offers later on, and they accepted. I don't think that's happening with the Revival. I think they care more than Gallows and Anderson, which is why they have their sights set on going to AEW. Despite how many tag team titles WWE throws at them, despite how many tag team titles WWE throws at the Revival, they will stand their ground and say, listen, we're on our way out. You can push us if you want, embarrass us, humiliate us, whatever. We are leaving this company when our contracts expire in 2020. And I hope they do. For their sake, I hope they do. Again, the match was fine, but the weird thing to me about this was that, and a lot of people tried to dispute me on this on Twitter, and I'll get to why they were wrong in a second. But the weird thing to me about this was that literally a week ago, 2 weeks ago, even 3 weeks ago, they were teasing something with Kofi, with him going heel. Seemingly. And not just Kofi, like we had the whole pancake thing. So it was maybe not the week after, but 2 weeks after Kofi lost the WWE Championship to Brock on the Fox debut show. He had the pancake in his hand backstage. A lot of people were talking about this. And he was kind of acting all positive, but you could see him squeezing the pancake juice out of the pancake, kind of crumbling it into little pieces in his hand in a backstage segment with Heavy Machinery. And it was a nice attention to detail with Kofi acting positive as always, but on the inside dying because he was no longer WWE champion. Then the following week, I think was when they lost to Roode and Ziggler. Maybe it was that same week. I don't remember. But either way, I think it was that following week they lost. And that may have been, I feel like Xavier was already off TV by that point. I'm not sure. I think he was already off TV. I'm pretty sure he was already off TV by that point because that was 2 weeks ago and Xavier was hurt, I think, earlier that week. and Kofi and Big E lost. Kofi got pinned again. He got pinned, and then they did a backstage video, a WWE.com exclusive. It's on their YouTube channel, where Kofi and Big E weren't doing their usual shtick. They were acting despondent. They were acting depressed. They weren't themselves. They were kind of, frustrated with their lack of luck recently, and it kind of looked like they were down in the dumps. And I was hoping, maybe they'll fail to win the SmackDown Tag Team titles, and they'll either go heel or tease a heel turn for maybe one or both of them, or at least some sort of a character change, okay? Because the New Day, as over as they are, have been doing the same shit now for almost 5 fucking years, okay? It's time for something new for the New Day. And they won back the belts here like none of that ever happened. So anyone arguing with me on Twitter about, it was probably the plan for the New Day to go heel before Xavier got hurt. They were teasing some sort of a character change for these guys days after Xavier got hurt. They lost on SmackDown without Xavier 2 weeks ago. I remember that. It was 2 weeks ago after Xavier got hurt. And they were still acting despondent and depressed, like I said earlier. So it's not a change of plans, because they were doing it even after Xavier was put on the shelf with the injury. So how do you explain that? Did they just wake up this morning and say, hey, let's put the tag team titles on the New Day? No, they were building towards this match 2 weeks ago. Maybe the plan all along was to put the belts back on the Revival. But I felt like it was a step backward, because how much more can you really do with these guys as the SmackDown Tag Team Champions? Maybe have them feud with Ziggler and Corbin, or Ziggler and Rude, rather. I guess. Do I really care? Not really. The Revival, I said my piece on them. But with the New Day, again, I mean, this isn't the worst thing about it, but I also should mention this. The Survivor Series match has also now been changed from what it was originally, with the Viking Raiders versus Undisputed Era versus the Revival. Now it's the Viking Raiders versus Undisputed Era versus the New Day. Again, should be a good match. The New Day are great, but I felt like the Revival were the perfect fit for that match. And it's not like they need a babyface team in there, because the Viking Raiders are babyface. So, I don't know. I thought it was kind of a waste. A good match, but not nearly as good as it could have been. And the title change, I wasn't a big fan of. Also on the show, we had Imperium attack Heavy Machinery before they were supposed to have some sort of a match, with who we never found out. But yeah, out came Walter, Alexander Wolf, Fabian Eichner, and Marcel Bartel. This was over within 30 seconds, but I liked the appearance from Walter on SmackDown. Never thought I would see the day that Walter would be on SmackDown, but here we are. Might be the first and last time, just because I don't think Walter is too keen on traveling and too keen on living in the U.S., so until he moves full-time to the States, he is never getting called up to the main roster. He probably doesn't give a shit. But, this might be the closest we ever come to seeing Walter on the main roster. And I thought it was cool. Now, what does this mean for NXT UK being involved in the brand warfare come Survivor Series? I don't think it means anything, really. They were in England for this show. It's not like they were in Vegas or some other city in the U.S. and they were flown out there specifically for that angle, like last week. They were in England anyway, so it doesn't really matter for anything. It doesn't really make much of a difference. Will they be involved at Survivor Series? I would argue probably not. Now, Imperium, Bartel, and Eichner have been on NXT recently. Walter has not been seen since the win over Kushida about a month ago. So I would be surprised if he's involved in Survivor Series in any form or fashion. But I just thought this was a cool angle. Even though it likely won't lead to anything with Imperium on the main roster or at Survivor Series, it was still a solid angle for what it was. We then saw Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro knock off Ali and Shorty G, Chad Gable, whatever the fuck you want to call him. I forgot, I'm still calling him Chad Gable, but I'm looking at my written review here and I wrote it down as Shorty G. So fuck that shit. But anyway, this was criminally short. It was a good match. It was fun for what it was, but way shorter than it should have been. Considering the level of talent involved in this thing, they should have been given at least 10 minutes. And the main event felt like it never fucking ended between Baron Corbin and Roman Reigns. It felt like it went on forever. And this was like maybe 3 or 4 minutes long. It was good, but it really accomplished nothing, really. I'm glad Nakamura picked up a non-title win for once, but how weird is it that they had Ali get pinned, and they, not WWE, but literally, CBS just did a special on this guy, focusing on stereotypes, how he's trying to shatter those stereotypes. I haven't seen it. It looked great. And they have the guy go out there, despite the mainstream attention he has right now, and get beat, get pinned. Not even have his team lose. He was the one who got pinned. And Gable getting pinned doesn't really matter to me because he's not really doing anything right now. Ali had a reason to either win this thing, and he also won for his team at Crown Jewel a week ago. And the guy got pinned. So what does this even mean? It was a good match, but I guess this was really just a backdrop for the Sami Zayn, Daniel Bryan angle they ran backstage now. 2 weeks ago, as I said here on the show, Sami Zayn was trying to convince Daniel Bryan essentially to come over to his side. He was already at the dark side to begin with, but basically saying here on this show, we want you in our mini faction of me, Nakamura, and I guess maybe Cesaro too. Like, he mentioned Cesaro many times, so maybe Cesaro's involved in that alliance too. I don't know. But anyway, he wanted Bryan in there as well, which would be a hell of a stable. But I think Bryan is better off at this point with the reactions he's been receiving lately. Just sticking it out as a babyface is probably the best possible option here. Before he could give Sami an answer, the lights went out in the backstage segment, and then out came The Fiend, attacking Bryan as Sami Zayn ran off. So we still don't know where Bryan's allegiance lies, or his allegiance lies. But we do know that seemingly Daniel Bryan might be The Fiend's first feud as the Universal Champion. And if so, I am fully on board with that. Now, I would love to see Bryan be the first one to take the title from Wyatt, be the one to, eliminate the threat of The Fiend from SmackDown. Apparently, they don't have those same hopes in mind, just because, I would highly, highly doubt they put the belt on Wyatt only for him to lose it at the subsequent pay-per-view to Daniel Bryan. Now, they need a big match for Bray Wyatt at Survivor Series because they're not doing the champion versus champion. The first year since they started doing the Raw versus SmackDown stuff, they're not doing champion versus champion at the show. Instead, they're doing Brock and Ray, which honestly could be really good, as I said on Wrestle Rant Radio on, on Thursday. And I guess Wyatt is having a match of his own as well, because it would make no sense for Bray Wyatt to go out there representing Team SmackDown in an elimination tag team match. Like, that'd be fucking dumb. Whether it's Wyatt or The Fiend or whatever, it would just be stupid. So, having him go out there and feud with Bryan over the WWE Championship, or rather the Universal title, going into that show, I think makes the most sense. Now, I don't want to see a clean finish of the show, but I'm sure Bryan would not mind taking a loss to Bray Wyatt after already losing to Adam Cole, after already losing to Ali earlier this year, Kofi Kingston, Buddy Murphy, like you name them, they've probably been, they probably own a win over Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan is probably one of the more giving guys in this entire company in terms of who he lets beat him. He's kind of like becoming the modern day Chris Jericho for WWE, where Jericho lost all the time. Whether it was to like Wade fucking Barrett or Fandango, Sin Cara, Ryback, like the guy lost left and right in his 2010, 2012, 2013 runs with WWE. The guy was losing all the time. And it seems like Bryan isn't quite at that level yet, but he's quickly approaching it with how many people he's put over in recent memory, at least in 2019. But yeah, so Bryan and The Fiend, honestly, I could be on board with that. I would not mind a Bryan versus Fiend feud. I would save it for down the road, but if they want to do it now, whatever. And this might upset some people, but honestly, Wyatt's best matches in WWE were with Daniel Bryan early on. That Royal Rumble match, to this day, might still be the best Bray Wyatt match I have ever seen. At the Rumble back in 2014, they had tremendous chemistry on that show. And Wyatt went over Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan never really gave Bray Wyatt his comeuppance. He may have beat Wyatt before. I don't think he ever did. He may have a DQ win over Bray Wyatt, but as far as I know, he's never beaten Bray Wyatt. Now, I would hope that they acknowledge their history from years ago if they do end up feuding over that championship. I know he hasn't feuded with The Fiend yet, but Bryan and Wyatt go way back to 2013 at the earliest, so I'm on board with the feud, and it should be really good even from an in-ring standpoint. The Rollins and Wyatt matches, again, they had good matches as regular old Bray Wyatt and Seth Rollins 2 years ago, and this time around they were some of the worst matches I've seen all year. So maybe the Fiend character will affect that, but again, if he's allowed to go out there and have a really good match, Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt could have a really good match at the Survivor Series show, if that's the direction they're going in. So we'll see. But, yeah, again, I have no issue with that being the Universal Championship match of the pay-per-view. Sasha Banks beat Nikki Cross. Good match here. We've seen it before. It was fine for what it was. Banks going over really only made sense. She will be captaining Team SmackDown at Survivor Series for the women, which makes sense. Again, no interference, I don't think, from Bayley. Afterward, we did see Bayley, the SmackDown Women's Champion, get attacked from behind by Shayna Baszler, the NXT Women's Champion. So it's going to be Shayna, Becky, and Bayley in a triple threat match at that pay-per-view. That's going to be awesome. I think the real money match there is with Baszler and Becky. I wouldn't give that away one-on-one just yet anyway. But I do like the three-way. There is no doubt Bayley feels like the afterthought in that match, but it should be a good match regardless. But yeah, I thought Banks and Nikki was fine. Banks did debut an all-new, maybe not an all-new, but a remix version of her heel theme song, of her, the theme that she's had now for about 5 years. She debuted a remix version of that, sung by Snoop Dogg, which is really cool, her cousin. The same lyrics he used for her theme song when he rapped her to the ring at WrestleMania 32. They put it in song form here and made it more official, and it actually sounds really good. I think it sounds really good, and it kind of fits her heel character perfectly. And hopefully this means Michael Cole is done with the dumb boss time bullshit. With this new theme song, we won't hear that da 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 da. Like, I like the theme song, but I was soured on it as soon as Michael Cole started doing the dumb "it's boss time" shtick. Good God, my ears would bleed every time he did that. And I think he did it on Friday too. I think he did it on this show. Not as over the top as he normally does, but he still said it. But anyway, I dig the new theme song. Tyson Fury was advertised for this episode of SmackDown. He's an England guy. He's from he's obviously from the UK. He comes out, cuts a promo about what his future holds with WWE, teased another match with Braun Strowman, who shook his hand. They made up, kissed and made up from Crown Jewel. The match that was absolute shit. Their match sucked. And honestly, I like Tyson Fury. The guy comes across well. He's a genuine fan. He seems like a genuinely good dude. My only issue with this was that the Braun match was terrible. In that whatever money they paid this guy to come on in for Crown Jewel was probably a waste because it accomplished nothing. Crown Jewel was going to sell no matter what. In Saudi Arabia, they would fucking pay for a Brock Lesnar Heath Slater main event. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. But they brought him in, did the match, buried Braun even more, 6 feet under, and that was it. They made up here. They attacked the B team. I did not give two shits about this. The crowd, I'm sure, got a kick out of it. It sounded like they were appreciating the angle and that they were behind Fury. He didn't get really that loud of a reaction when he came out. So again, if it was up to me, I would just bypass this completely. I would never have, Tyson Fury back in the ring, whether it's teaming with Braun or feuding with Brock. If the Kane-Brock match was any indication, I think that would be a complete and utter disaster. So I would hope not, but this seemed like more that it was for the live crowd than anything. Honestly, I would have saved this as a dark show or a dark segment after SmackDown went off the air because this really served no purpose in the long run. We then had Carmella and Dana Brooke beat Fire and Desire to qualify for the women's Team SmackDown at Survivor Series. This was what it was. The crowd could not have given two shits. I would have rather seen Rose and Deville on Team SmackDown as over Carmella and Brooke, who don't really feel like threats. I know Carmella was recently the 24/7 champion, for whatever the fuck that's worth. And Dana Brooke is just terrible. Mandy Rose and Sonya I like a lot, but they've just done nothing on SmackDown for the last number of years. So, the match was what it was. I could not have given two shits about it. The main event, King Corbin and Roman Reigns, another match I could not have given two shits about. This was just so boring. It got interesting in the final few minutes, but it had way too much interference from Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. Why they were there, we were never told. Corey Graves speculated because Roman Reigns isn't a locker room leader anymore or whatever. And I would assume that Corbin will probably get Roode and Ziggler on his team for Team SmackDown at the pay-per-view. I really don't know. It would make no sense for Corbin and Reigns to feud and then to put them on the same team at Survivor Series. This is why I don't like the brand supremacy stuff, because it takes away from the everyday angles. Corbin beats Reigns. Great. Honestly, I liked it. It was pleasantly surprising. Where do you go from here? What do you do with this feud? Because they won't go one-on-one again to the pay-per-view, because it's going to be the Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT stuff. So what do you do with Roman and Corbin, It kind of feels like it's on ice until after the pay-per-view, unless they wrap it up before then, but what a complete waste this was. I'm glad Corbin got at least one win over Roman, but I'm sure this will culminate with Roman beating Corbin one-on-one, whether it be next week or the week after, or at least any other point within the next month. But as a match, this bored me to tears. And that was the overall show. We ended on a very uneventful note with Corbin beating Reigns, which was cool, and, for me anyway, in my opinion. And that was it. They went off the air and that was it. So I thought this was a very dull episode of SmackDown. No real energy, sense of urgency, excitement for Survivor Series in a few weeks, which is coming up quickly. It's already the 9th. And I think Survivor Series is in 2 weeks. So they have 2 weeks worth of TV before the pay-per-view. And, so we'll see what they can put together. But so far, on the SmackDown side of things, it hasn't been great. SmackDown last week was one of the better shows, if not the best show all year. Back to business as usual with this show, which was a complete dud. So if this is what Fox is paying for, I feel bad because this was not a great show at all. But hopefully SmackDown next week will be better. I have hope for whatever reason. I do. I don't know why. I don't know where I found it, but I have hope for SmackDown next week. I was going to say, excuse the sound of the heat in the background of, the audio of this video, but it's been off for the last, couple of minutes, I think, if not longer than that. But the heat was on. Thankfully, it's not too cold and where I'm recording the show right now, but 25 degrees. Again, I'll say that again. 25 degrees. You can't blame me for having the heat on in the background for a night that is as cold as this one. But anyway, going back to SmackDown, thank you guys, as always, for checking out my review. I appreciate it. As I've said for the last couple weeks, we'll probably stick with this unless I have something going on where I can't watch SmackDown live or I'm busy on any given weekend, which does happen from time to time. Other than that, I will be breaking down SmackDown every single week right here on the channel, so subscribe today if you haven't already. Like the video, drop a comment, share the video. All the support of the show is greatly appreciated. So, until next time, guys, enjoy AEW Full Gear tonight. If you didn't enjoy SmackDown like I didn't either, then enjoy AEW Full Gear tonight, if nothing else. Until next time, guys, I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.